I realized I'd messed up when nobody reacted at all. I stood in our living room last Sunday afternoon, hands shaking as I told my family what I'd done to Marcus at school. I'd been carrying this Gil. I knew I messed up the moment Marcus hit the concrete. His body went limp, and the sound his head made against that bottom step still haunts me. I didn't mean for him to fall down the stairs. I just wanted him to stop. It started 3 weeks ago. Marcus had been harassing Cheyenne for months. Little comments in the hallway, disgusting texts, the usual creep behavior. She tried ignoring him, but he just got worse. That day after chemistry, he cornered her by her locker. I wasn't there, but Seth told me later that Cheyenne was sobbing when she finally got away. Marcus had said things about her body, her family, things no one should have to hear. I found him behind the gym with Ronan. They were laughing about it like it was some big joke. I saw red. Before I knew what was happening, I had Marcus by his shirt collar. "You think that's funny?" I screamed in his face. He just smirked at me. "What are you gonna do about it?" he taunted. That's when I shoved him hard. He stumbled backward, arms flailing. The stairs to the lower parking lot were right there. I didn't think. I just pushed. Marcus fell. 6 concrete steps. His head hit the bottom one with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Ronan started screaming. Marcus didn't move. He was unconscious for 6 minutes before the ambulance arrived. I know because I counted every second. Frozen in place, watching the paramedics strap him into a neck brace. The next day, Janelle, a nurse at the hospital and my mom's friend, told me Marcus had a skull fracture. He was in intensive care. His parents hadn't left his side. "This is serious," she said. "There's concern about brain damage." I avoided my family for 3 weeks after that. I couldn't face them. I'd go to school, then wander around town until dinner. I'd slip in late, eat quickly, and disappear to my room. Yesterday, Seth caught me in the parking lot. His face was grim. "Marcus's parents hired a lawyer," he said. "Detective Blake is finishing the investigation. They're talking about pressing charges." I knew I couldn't hide anymore. I decided to tell my family everything that Sunday afternoon. They deserved to know before the police showed up at our door. Sunday came. Mom was folding laundry in the living room. Dad was reading the sports section. Paige was at the kitchen table, hunched over her calculus homework. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them. Normal family, normal Sunday. I was about to blow it all up. "I need to tell you guys something," I said. My voice sounded strange, too high. "It's about Marcus Thompson." Dad didn't look up from his paper. Mom kept folding the same blue t-shirt she'd been working on for the past 10 minutes. Paige's pencil hovered over the same problem. "I heard him," I continued, my heart pounding. "He was harassing Cheyenne, saying horrible things. I confronted him behind the gym and shoved him. He fell down the stairs. Nothing. No reaction at all. Did you hear me? Marcus is in intensive care with a skull fracture because of me. His parents hired a lawyer. The police are investigating." Dad turned a page of his newspaper. Mom smoothed the same spot on that blue shirt. Paige didn't blink. "Hello?" I waved my hand. "Are you listening? I could be arrested." That's when I realized something was very wrong. Dad's eyes weren't moving across the page. Mom's hands were repeating the exact same folding motion. Paige hadn't moved a muscle. I grabbed Dad's newspaper and yanked it away. He continued staring at the empty space where it had been. His eyes didn't track the movement at all. "Dad?" I snapped my fingers in front of his face. Nothing. I moved to Mom next, waving my hand directly in front of her eyes. She didn't blink, didn't react, just kept folding that same blue shirt with mechanical precision. "Paige!" I shook my sister's shoulder. Her body was rigid, like a store mannequin. Her skin felt normal, but she was completely unresponsive. Panic surged through me. I ran to the window and looked outside. Mr. Trevor was pushing his lawnmower in a perfect circle, the grass bag overflowing. Missus Kendra stood by her flower bed, holding a running hose that wasn't connected to anything. I stumbled back from the window, my heart racing. Something was terribly wrong with everyone. Or maybe something was wrong with me. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. I tried the landline. Dead. I grabbed my keys and ran outside. I needed to find someone, anyone, who could explain what was happening. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Brianna, our neighbor, standing perfectly still in her yard, holding a watering can that wasn't pouring. The whole neighborhood was frozen in time, except for me. I stood in our living room, staring at my family in disbelief. Something was deeply wrong. My confession about assaulting Marcus had triggered absolutely nothing from them. No shock, no anger, no disappointment, just nothing. "This isn't funny," I said, my voice rising with each word. "I could go to jail for what I did to Marcus." Dad's newspaper hung suspended in the empty air where I'd yanked it from his hands. His eyes remained fixed on the blank space, not tracking any movement. Mom's fingers continued their mechanical folding motion on that same blue t-shirt, over and over. "Can you hear me at all?" I shouted directly into Dad's ear. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just kept staring ahead with that vacant expression. I turned to Paige. Her pencil was frozen mid-calculation, her eyes locked on a single equation in her calculus book. I waved my hand between her face and the textbook. Nothing. "Paige!" I grabbed her shoulders and shook her. Her body moved rigidly, like a department store mannequin. When I let go, she immediately returned to her exact previous position. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. This was insane. I had to wake them up somehow. I returned to the living room and hesitated for just a second before splashing the water directly into Dad's face. The water ran down his cheeks and dripped onto his shirt. He didn't react at all, didn't wipe it away, didn't even blink as droplets clung to his eyelashes. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I tried pinching Mom's arm. She didn't flinch. I clapped my hands loudly in front of Paige's face. She remained perfectly still. "Hello?" I screamed at the top of my lungs. My voice echoed through the house, but nobody responded. I stumbled to the front window, panic rising in my chest. Outside, Mr. Trevor was still pushing his lawnmower in that perfect circle, the grass clippings spilling from the overfilled bag. The motor wasn't making any sound, none at all. Mrs. Kendra stood by her flower bed, watering nothing. The hose in her hand wasn't connected to anything, yet she continued the motion of watering her plants. Her face was blank, expressionless. I grabbed my phone again, still no signal. I tried the TV, it wouldn't turn on. The radio was silent too. Complete silence filled the house. No hum of the refrigerator, no ticking of the clock on the wall, no distant traffic sounds. I ran back to Paige and tried to move her arm. It resisted slightly, then moved stiffly, like a doll with tight joints. When I released it, it snapped back to its original position. I tried closing her calculus book. It wouldn't budge, like it was glued to the table. This isn't happening, I whispered to myself. This can't be real. I grabbed my car keys again and burst through the front door. The air outside felt wrong, too still, too quiet. No breeze, no birds, no distant sounds of cars or neighbors or dogs barking. Just absolute silence. Brianna was in her front yard, frozen in place. She was holding a watering can tilted toward her flower bed, but no water was coming out. Her eyes stared vacantly at the flowers, her expression completely blank. "Brianna," I called out. "Can you hear me? What's happening?" She didn't respond, didn't move a muscle. I approached her slowly and waved my hand in front of her face. Nothing. I touched her arm. It was warm, not cold like I half expected. She was breathing, but so slowly I could barely detect it. I looked up and down our street. Every single person was frozen in place. Mrs. Wilson was suspended mid-stride while walking her dog. The dog was just as motionless, one paw raised in the air. The Hernandez kids were caught in the middle of a basketball game, the ball floating impossibly between them. I got in my car and turned the key. The engine didn't make a sound, but somehow the car started moving when I pressed the gas pedal. I drove through the neighborhood in complete silence, the wheels strangely light under my hands. Every street was the same. People frozen in everyday activities. A mail carrier stood with a package in hand, halfway up someone's front steps. A jogger was suspended mid-stride. 2 women were caught in conversation, their mouths open, hands gesturing at nothing. I drove to the high school, hoping against hope that things would be normal there. The parking lot was full of cars, but no one moved between them. I ran inside. Students and teachers stood like statues in the hallways. Some caught mid-step, others frozen while opening lockers. I found Seth by his locker, completely still, his hand reaching for his history textbook. I shook him hard. "Seth, wake up, it's me." Nothing. His body moved stiffly under my hands, then returned to position when I let go. I ran through the entire school. Everyone was frozen. The clock on the wall was stuck at 12:17. In the cafeteria, a student was suspended in midair, having slipped on something. His tray and food hung in the air around him like a bizarre art installation. I drove back home, my mind racing with increasingly desperate theories. Gas leak? Mass hallucination? Was I losing my mind? When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed something strange in the distance. A faint blue light coming from the direction of the park. It was the only thing that seemed different in this frozen world. I got out of my car and stared at the light. It pulsed slightly, beckoning. I glanced back at our house, where my family remained locked in their endless loop of meaningless actions. I had to find out what that light was. It was the only thing that seemed alive in this entire frozen town. I started walking toward the park, my footsteps the only sound in an otherwise silent world. I drove through my neighborhood in complete silence, trying to understand what was happening. Every person I passed was frozen in place, stuck in an endless loop of meaningless actions. The complete absence of sound was the most disturbing part. No birds, no cars, no distant voices. I circled back to my house and parked in the driveway. My family was exactly as I'd left them. Dad staring at nothing, where his newspaper had been. Mom folding that same blue t-shirt over and over. Paige locked on that single calculus problem. I grabbed my phone and called Seth. It rang, which surprised me since nothing else seemed to be working. After 3 rings, he answered. "Hello?" I said. "Seth, can you hear me?" There was silence on the other end, just dead air. "Seth, are you there? Something weird is happening to everyone." Still nothing. I hung up and texted him instead. "Emergency. Come to my house now. Something's wrong with everyone." 20 minutes later, Seth's car pulled into my driveway. Relief flooded through me as I ran outside to meet him. Finally, someone normal. "Seth, thank God you're here. Everyone's frozen or something. My family, the neighbors, everyone at school." Seth got out of his car and walked past me without a word. His face was blank, his movements stiff and mechanical. He walked straight into my house and stood in the living room, staring at nothing. "Seth?" I waved my hand in front of his face. No reaction. He'd come when I texted, but he was just as frozen as everyone else. I tried calling 911. The phone rang, but no one answered. I tried the police station directly. Same thing. I even tried calling the hospital where Marcus was staying. Nothing but endless ringing. I got back in my car and drove to the hospital. The parking lot was full, but no one moved between the cars. Inside, the scene was eerie. Doctors and nurses stood frozen mid-step. Patients sat motionless in waiting room chairs. A child was suspended in midair, jumping from a chair, completely still. I made my way to the intensive care unit. Marcus's room wasn't hard to find. His parents stood outside the door, frozen like statues. His mother's face was locked in an expression of worry, tissues clutched in her rigid hand. Inside, Marcus lay in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to silent machines. Ronan sat in a chair beside the bed, completely still. His hand was extended, reaching for a cup of water that sat on the bedside table. "Ronan?" I said, knowing there would be no response. I was right. I left the hospital and drove to the police station. Detective Blake stood in his office, frozen while examining photographs of the stairs where Marcus had fallen. His coffee cup was tipped slightly, the liquid inside suspended as if gravity had stopped working. I drove all over town, the mall, the grocery store, the high school again, everywhere. People were locked in time, doing ordinary things that now seemed bizarre and unsettling in their stillness. The silence was becoming unbearable. I turned on my car radio and cranked the volume to maximum. Nothing came out, not even static. I screamed at the top of my lungs just to hear something. My voice sounded wrong, like it was being swallowed by the silence around me. I drove back toward home, feeling increasingly desperate. That's when I noticed the blue light again, coming from the direction of the park. It seemed brighter now, pulsing with a strange rhythm. I parked at the edge of the park and got out. The light was coming from the center, near the old bandstand. I walked toward it slowly, my footsteps, the only sound in the world. In the middle of the park stood a metallic object unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was about the size of a mailbox, but shaped like nothing I could describe. It seemed to shift and change as I looked at it, never quite settling into a definite form. The blue light emanated from what might have been the top, pulsing like a heartbeat. I approached it cautiously. The closer I got, the more my skin tingled with a strange electricity. When I was about 10 feet away, I heard something that made me freeze in place. A voice. Not from the object, but from everywhere at once. Around me, above me, inside my head. Subject demonstrates expected emotional responses to temporal isolation, the voice said. It was clinical, detached, neither male nor female. Guilt response confirmed. Empathy for victim verified through hospital visitation. I spun around, looking for the source. Who's there? What is this? Subject directly acknowledges observation, proceeding to phase 2 of evaluation. The metallic object pulsed brighter, the blue light intensifying until I had to shield my eyes. What's happening? I shouted into the empty park. What did you do to everyone? Everyone is fine, the voice replied. They are in stasis while we complete our assessment of your case. My case? What are you talking about? Who are you? The blue light dimmed slightly, pulsing in a different pattern now. My name is Sloan, the voice said, and I need to discuss your actions regarding Marcus Thompson. The voice surrounded me in the silent park, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I stared at the strange metallic object pulsing with blue light. My name is Sloan, the voice said. I'm a behavioral scientist monitoring your situation. I took a step back, my heart racing. This couldn't be real. What situation? What did you do to everyone? The blue light pulsed in rhythm with Sloan's words. Your assault on Marcus Thompson triggered our intervention protocol. We needed to evaluate your moral reasoning. I was confused and terrified. Nothing made sense. Everyone you know is in temporal stasis, Sloan continued. They're perfectly fine, just paused while we complete our assessment. Assessment of what? I demanded. Who are you people? The light shifted to a deeper blue. We observe human behavior in critical moments. Your violent response to Marcus's harassment of Cheyenne presented an ideal case study. I felt sick. They were treating my life like some science experiment. So you just froze time to watch me panic? That's messed up. Not exactly, Sloan replied. We needed to see how you'd respond to the consequences of your actions without external influence. The metallic object shifted shape slightly, its edges blurring. I couldn't look directly at it without feeling dizzy. You have 2 options now, Sloan said. We can return you to your timeline at the moment before you confronted Marcus. You could make a different choice. I stood silently, considering the implications. A do-over, no assault, no Marcus in the hospital, no potential charges. Or, Sloan continued, you can return to the moment of your confession and face the consequences of what you've done. I walked away from the pulsing object, trying to think. This was insane. Before you decide, Sloan said, I want to show you something. The park around me blurred, and suddenly I was back in the hospital. Marcus lay in his bed, but this time I could see him clearly. His head was partially shaved where they'd operated. A long line of stitches curved across his skull. His brain is swelling, Sloan's voice explained. The doctors are concerned about permanent damage. I moved closer to the bed. Marcus looked small and vulnerable, nothing like the bully who had tormented Cheyenne. He was wrong to harass your girlfriend, Sloan said. But did he deserve this? I felt tears forming in my eyes. No, I never meant for him to fall down the stairs. I was just so angry. The hospital scene dissolved, and I was back in the park. There are multiple possible futures from this point, Sloan said. In some, Marcus recovers fully. In others, he suffers permanent impairment. I sat down on the grass, overwhelmed. What about me? What happens to me? That depends on your choices now, Sloan replied, and how you handle the consequences. The blue light pulsed more rapidly. We've observed many humans in similar situations. Some choose to escape accountability. Others face it directly. I thought about Cheyenne, about how scared she'd been after Marcus cornered her. I thought about my family, frozen in time, not yet knowing what I'd done. If I go back and change things, would Marcus still harass Cheyenne? Most likely, Sloan said. Your intervention, while extreme, did stop his behavior. I stood up, my decision made. I want to go back to my confession. I'll face whatever happens. The light brightened. You understand this means potential legal consequences? Juvenile detention is a possibility. I nodded. I know, but running away won't fix anything. I need to own what I did. Sloan's voice softened slightly. That's an uncommon choice in our studies. The metallic object began to pulse faster, the blue light expanding outward. Return to your home, Sloan instructed. When you arrive, time will resume. Your family will hear your confession as if no interruption occurred. I walked back to my car, feeling strangely calm. Will I remember any of this? Yes, Sloan said. the voice now fading. This experience will remain with you. I drove home in silence, rehearsing what I would say to my family. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked exactly as I'd left it. I walked inside and stood in the living room doorway. Dad with his newspaper, Mom folding laundry, Paige at her calculus homework. I need to tell you guys something, I said, my voice shaking slightly. It's about Marcus Thompson. The blue light flashed once behind me, and suddenly Dad looked up from his paper. Mom stopped folding. Paige turned in her chair. I heard him, I continued, my heart pounding. He was harassing Cheyenne, saying horrible things. I confronted him behind the gym and shoved him. He fell down the stairs. Dad slowly lowered his newspaper. What do you mean? He fell down the stairs. Mom's hands froze on the blue t-shirt. Is he okay? I took a deep breath. No, he's in intensive care with a skull fracture. His parents hired a lawyer. The police are investigating. The room erupted in shocked questions. Dad stood up, his face pale. Mom rushed over and grabbed my shoulders. Paige stared at me in horror. It was terrible. It was real, but at least they were responding. 2 days later, Detective Blake came to our house. My parents had already hired a lawyer. I told Blake everything, exactly as it happened. I never meant for him to fall, I said, but I did push him. That's on me. 3 weeks later, I stood before a juvenile court judge. Marcus was still in the hospital, but improving. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about his recovery. I was sentenced to probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. The judge called my actions serious, but not malicious. As I left the courthouse with my parents, I thought about Sloan and that strange blue light. I wondered how many other people they'd watched, how many other moments they'd frozen in time. I never told anyone about what happened during those frozen hours. Who would believe me? But I carried the memory with me, a constant reminder that our choices have consequences we can't always predict. Sometimes I look up at the night sky and wonder if Sloan is still watching. I hope they saw that I kept my word. I faced what I had done. And sometimes, on very quiet nights, I swear I can see a faint blue light pulsing in the distance.